Hello, hello. I think we're live.
Hello, everyone.
Rolling for initiative. Nice. First comment. All right. Cool. I haven't done lives too much through Restream that often, so I'm like working out the kinks, but it looks good. It looks good. We will give some minute for the LinkedIn crowd to roll in. You know, it's a little like half a second delayed or half a minute delayed. How you doing? How's it going? How's your week going, John?
Man, I'm doing well, although I mean it's Friday. Like this weeks are flying. We're already over halfway through January, which is nuts. But,
right?
But the cool thing is I've got some fun, exciting stuff that's coming up, including what we're about to be talking about. So that's getting me excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. As you know, like I've been super like just enthralled with the whole thing, like the whole world building aspects of it and stuff that I want to share. So really looking forward to that. Just gonna shout out Robert. What's up? Robert Van Orsch. Oot. Nicholas. Central EU. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, Robert's also, he's in the EU too. And
Nice.
He is a great, he's a Ninja user, but also great guy and super into D&D. And so he's been following through this project, and we're gonna
very cool
at some point.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited to share some more bits and pieces of this. So looking for some feedback from the D&D community. Hopefully, as I share a little bit about like the story and the narrative and kind of the thing, I will do the D&D crowd justice. That's something I want to mention too, is my career in my D&D career, which is non-existent at this point so far, but we're getting close. So, Jonathan, why don't you? I'm gonna reverse it. I'll introduce myself after, but if you want to give an introduction to people who are here, who you are, what you do, that kind of thing. What's NinjaOne? Is that like some sort of clothing brand, or what's that all about?
Vendors, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks, Spencer, and happy to do that. The first step in change, is admitting that you have a problem. You recognize it's new year, new you. You recognize there wasn't D&D in your life, and now you're taking the steps to change that. So applaud you for
Exactly.
that. Um, so yeah, I'm Jonathan Crowe. I'm director of community at NinjaOne. NinjaOne is a provider of it's an IT management platform. Automated endpoint management is our line right now. We started off with providing RMM, remote monitoring and management software for MSPs, and since then have branched out to include backup, some basic ticketing, documentation, MDM that just launched. And the whole idea is we're dedicated to automating a lot of the stuff that's repetitive and time consuming for IT admins and IT teams. And we want to free them up, allow them to automate those things, work with a tool that's streamlined, and work with a team at NinjaOne who is open to feedback and constantly working to make things really people in IT their jobs easier. So that's what I'm
Yep.
doing. And as the director of community, man, I've got a great job. I work with folks like Robert. We have a Discord server that's up to, I think it's like 9,000 people now.
Wow.
Um,
Nice.
and talking all things Ninja, but other things too, all things IT. And I'm constantly looking for people to partner with in ways that we can be active and present in the greater IT community, but also do fun stuff and help with education and training and all of that.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to share how like we kind of first got introduced
Yeah.
about this campaign, this backups and bandwidth campaign. But maybe so I'll just share a little bit about myself real quick, so everybody knows who I am, and then I want to talk about how we got like kind of synced up, and
Yeah.
then how that went from like tabletop to like full blown world building, like characters, NPCs, and abilities, and actions, and decisions, and all this D&D thing, this stuff, this rabbit hole that you have me go down.
Spencer got bit by the bug. You totally got bit by it.
I did very much so, and it's very exciting. So as you can tell, so my name is Spencer. I am a pen tester at Secure IT 360, which is a full service cybersecurity firm. We do offensive security. We do like audits, compliance assessments, like gap assessments, incident response. We have a SOC. So quite a bit of folks over there. Previous to pen testing, I was a sysadmin for a long time. I kind of started in help desk, worked my way up to sysadmin. Then I was in charge of security at that last job. And then I transitioned to consulting and doing pen testing. And I haven't looked back since, but I do remember my pen testing days, which is why I'm wearing this shirt today that I made, because I very much consider myself still a sysadmin in many ways. How I conduct pen tests, how I interface with clients, who I interface with, the kind of content that I make, the kind of things that I like to do when it comes to tools and community stuff like this, is very much sysadmin, defender, IT person focused, because that's what I know and love. And I was talking to a coworker of mine the other day. It's like, I would still be at that last job had it not been for some other things that kind of steered me in the direction of offensive security. But I very much enjoy that work to this day, and still do. So that's a little bit about me. I've run numerous tabletops before in like my consulting time. So doing instant response tabletops, coming up with scenarios and making IT admins sweat and kind of be fearful, but kind of like help them through the exercise and offer recommendations and improvements and things like that. So I'm very comfortable with that as well. So that's just real briefly about me. Jonathan, why don't you share a little bit how you reached out, and then I'll share kind of the rabbit hole I went down. Yeah. And we'll hopefully land on backups and bandwidth and kind of talk about this scenario that we're putting together and kind of tease that a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I'd love to give like a little bit of background about where backups and bandwidth came from, and give some nods to some things that helped inspire it, because there's definitely some things I want to give shout outs to. But in terms of us connecting, I mean, everything you just said about your background is what really drew me to you. I'm still active on Twitter or X, for better and for worse. And you were an account that I was following, and that really stood out to me. A little bit more background about myself. Prior to NinjaOne, I was at a company, an endpoint security startup called Barkley, and based in Boston. And so, security, that really became a passion of mine. And something that really stood out to me was there's so much noise with security, right? And there's so much hype, and it can be difficult. I found that there was kind of a lack of a lot of people following through with, okay, here's this cool new, 0 day, or here's some, like, all the fear, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt stuff going on, right? But where are the actual practical steps for helping out the poor IT teams who are bearing the brunt of actually implementing a lot of controls and everything? What are the actual actionable steps people can take to react to some of this stuff? And so that's always kind of informed how I think about security. And when I find people like yourself who do have that same, it's clear you have the empathy for the defenders, and you are constantly looking for what's practical advice. It's not just about the hype and the noise. It's what can we all do and how can we all make each other better? And so that really stood out to me, and was really a big cause for why I wanted to reach out to you for this.
Yeah. Yeah. And, in going through this, you mentioned kind of like the inspiration of it. Would you share like a little bit more of like what was your inspiration specifically for backups and bandwidth, and kind of like how you took different components from other tabletops or other games and things like that, and kind of came up with this approach?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. And I'll just give a little shout out to the shirt there.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I
if
can't
anybody
wait.
wants one, let me know, and we'll send one out to you. So the idea behind backups and bandwidth, it really started with, again, like my exposure to the security world, and seeing how, man, you security guys get to do all the fun stuff. You get to have CTS, you get to do tabletopping, and you're playing through, like, being hacked by these by threat actors.
Some people might argue with the amount of fun that we have, or that defenders have.
The grass is always greener, I guess.
Sure,
right?
sure.
But yeah, from the outside, I mean, looking at that, I mean, I guess in addition to them being fun, all these activities just seem really useful in terms of training, in terms of actually having your plan, but then testing it out. What do you really have involved? And I started thinking about it, like, why is this confined to just security focuses? Why isn't this, with my focus now at Ninja being more on MSPs, technicians, sysadmins at internal IT company, internal IT departments? They can get value out of this stuff too. They should be testing out and role playing, and like, here's their documented processes, and procedures. Are they actually testing those things out? How are they reacting to downtime and having to recover from things and troubleshooting? Could we do something along those lines? And so I started looking at, well, who's doing tabletopping and doing cool stuff? I'm always kind of interested in looking for people who are being creative about it, or doing something a bit different that's engaging, right? Anytime you're doing training, that stuff's important. You got to get people interested in having fun with it for it to really stick. And so I came across what Black Hills Information Security is doing, right? With obviously backdoors and breaches. And I decided, can I create a project that's going to be very confusing and provide a name that's going to be way too close to that? No, I didn't go about it that way. What I did do was take note of what they were doing. And at first I was like, well, this seems awesome, but again, it's not really tailored for, like, the average IT admin isn't going to be doing deep data forensics and IR and everything. Can we take some elements of this? And when going down that route, rather than it being card based, I started thinking about, well, it's really more about, like, what stuck out to me from their approach is a lot of the magic is really in the discussion. So it's really just having the prompts, and okay, you try this certain process, or try to use this certain tool, or this certain workflow. It doesn't work. Why wouldn't it work? Do we have the capabilities to be able actually be able to do that? And it's really more about causing that discussion and that introspection. And so, I think their cards are awesome, but when I started thinking about backups and bandwidth, it was like, well, maybe they're not necessary. Maybe we can just create some scenarios and go more of the actual D&D route. That's something that I play with some buddies in my spare time. That's my little geek card moment. I don't have like tech geek cred, but I have that. And so, yeah, it kind of spun out from there. And I think the first one we did was around a World Backup Day. And we had one of our product managers at NinjaOne, Dan Myers. He's in charge of backup. He also plays D&D a lot and is an awesome DM. And we did a scenario, just as fun. We had some people come on and serve as players, and we had them run through the scenario. And we had a lot of fun making it kind of like fantasy and D&D themed. And from there, we've done this a few more times, and the response has always been really solid and really great. And I think my goal for this year, going into it and working with you and working with some other folks, has been, can we build off that? And can we turn this into something where people get inspired by it, they have some fun, but it really is something that they can do with their own teams. They can take these scenarios, they can adapt them on their own, and they can test out their own team's capabilities and improve those.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to bring up the flyer so that we got that. Oh, sweet. Love the dragon too, with the laptop and the guy like holding the laptop screen. So yeah, and when you approached me about it, I was like, oh, cool, tabletop. Like this will be like, kind of like what I've done in the past with instant response tabletops. And I was totally down to make like this scenario. And as I started getting into it and kind of thinking about it, and especially when we started talking about like the D&D elements of it, that begins to be, you go down the rabbit hole of world building and narrative and the storytelling aspects of it, and kind of like the traditional D&D aspects with like tools or weapons, and you have actions and you have decisions and you have these dice rolls, and you have these NPCs and these interesting story arcs and things like that. And I just, for one reason or another, I got really, really interested in the whole world building aspect of it, for the purpose of showcasing a scenario that's a very realistic scenario. It happens all the time, to help people learn, kind of like troubleshoot, learn how to troubleshoot in the moment, in the heat of the moment. That's something that I think is very important, is in the heat of the moment, right? You're going through an incident, you're going through something, there's a certain amount of like fog of war, or whatever you want to call it, right? There's a certain amount of pressure, and it's almost like you freeze up and you don't know what to do. And it's like, oh shoot, like you know the tools, you know how to use your security products or your IT products, you know how to recover a backup, but in the heat of the moment, it's like, oh man, I've never really done it before in this kind of scenario, and when the pressure is on, right? So I like the things that attracted this to me is that aspect of it, plus like the storytelling, the world building aspect of it is a very creative process. And kind of taking what D&D has and making like a cybersecurity, IT, admin focused TTRPG, right? And I'm using the D&D lingo now because I feel like super legit. So that's really what interested me, was the storytelling, the world building, and then combining that with like the lessons that you can learn and the education and the training and the getting the reps in kind of aspects of this in a very fun format. And to your point, the best tabletops I've had are the ones where the client like really leans in. They kind of almost are playing, right? Where, the scenario is made up, but they're really kind of getting into it and kind of playing off each other and kind of like working through it, as they would in a real scenario. And those clients get the best results from it, in my opinion. Same thing with this, like the more fun you have, the more engaging it is, the more memorable it's going to be. And the more I think, that learning will stay with you, and you'll kind of remember those things, if you have to do those things in real life,
Yeah, 100%. I think there's always the element too of, having the plan, it's the Mike Tyson quote. Having the
Yeah.
plan is one thing. When you're feeling the pressure, it can be different. You also, it's just a great way to identify gaps. Like there's always going to be slight gaps, and I mean, how often are people updating their processes and procedures,
Yep.
changes in personnel or your environment or anything.
Yep.
And so it's a great way to pressure test things. And I think that if you go into it with the goal of, hey, we're going to we're going to have fun with this scenario. And the whole goal is to come away with a list of where are our gaps? What are the things that we need to be working on? And then you have actionable takeaways. I mean, that if we can get people doing that, that's magic to me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's one of those things where it's leaning more so into like maybe the entertainment and kind of fun aspects of D&D, and then have some of the educational and training components of like a traditional tabletop or other card games like Backdoors and Breaches and things like that. So I think it's a cool mix. And like you said before, it's not as hardcore, like with having to know, Splunk and forensics, and like not so deep where it's not overwhelming, or it seems like too hard to get into if you're not familiar with those things, and maybe there's like a little bit of a barrier to entry. This, I think, hopefully is kind of like a good middle ground of like getting people interested, especially because the D&D community is huge, which I've learned. And the intersection, right? If you were to draw like a Venn diagram of the intersection between like IT people and D&D, is probably enormous, as I'm coming to find out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's some, I know, Trusted Sec obviously is another big one in your guys' world, and Tyler Hudak there is huge into role playing games, and so
Okay.
we had him like involved in some previous stuff too. But
Yeah.
I think there's definitely an overlap. And in addition, I think having, when it came to like conceptualizing, like how could this work, and how close to D&D would we actually want it to be?
Mhm.
There's one path you could take where you're listing out you're trying to map things, right, to specific tools, and giving stats and all that stuff. And that's not what
Yep.
we wanted to do with backups and bandwidth. I think the goal of it is really to make it adaptable. And so it's really about just prompting, right? It's prompting, here's a scenario, because I think that's probably, if you step back and think, a lot of IT leaders are probably like, yeah, sure, I see the value. It makes sense to me that having our team go through and practice our different workflows and procedures makes sense,
Yep.
right? But we just want to make it easier for them to like, okay, here's something to go now and run with, and having the kind of like wiggle room to say like, we're going to give you a scenario that can be easily adapted to your own, environment, your own
Yep.
tools, your own processes and team and all that.
Yeah, and on that same note, with like the adaptability and the decision points, I think a lot of things, especially when it comes to like responding to an issue in your environment, whether it's like a failed backup or a corrupt file or some sort of security event or something like that, there's a lot of things that you just don't think of until you're in the moment and you're like, oh, I wonder if X, or I wonder if Y, right? Or, I wonder, we've recovered our backups before, but we haven't recovered it in this specific way. And going through that exercise makes you really think of that, like, oh, maybe we would have to recover to some other hardware, some other system, right? Or a different site, something like that. I think these exercises are really good for kind of like figuring out the fringe cases of like, what happens if everything doesn't go according to plan, and it kind of helps you think through those things that maybe you wouldn't have discovered otherwise or thought about to have those conversations before. So I think that's another good reason for these types of tabletops and exercises. It helps you kind of think through those things and kind of discover what you don't know or weren't really aware of to begin with.
100%. And I think it's also an opportunity to break down silos within orgs, right?
Mhm.
I mean, this is something that you're all about, right? And I really appreciate about you is the uh, making connections between security and even offensive security and the actual defenders too, right?
Yep.
Um, and I think it goes even beyond that into, I'm excited to get, as we're planning out these different scenarios and doing these streams, the players we're having on, coming from different roles, right? Like having help desk on there, having security focused people on there, having the sysadmins, the network folks. Like, it's a great opportunity for orgs to actually get everyone in a room together, virtually or physically, and really try that out, because
Yep.
it's very easy to stay siloed.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What are your thoughts on kind of like teasing a little bit about the scenario?
Oh man. So what also I could never, like, I gotta tell you, man, like reaching out to you, I was so psyched to that you responded and that you were interested. And then this has gone so much better than I even could have hoped, because like I said, like we talked about, you kind of got bit by the bug, and
Yep.
you've gotten really into it. And what I think is super cool about it, um, when we first started doing these things, you can go on to Ninja's YouTube and go over to the live section. You can see some past streams we've done. Um,
Mhm.
and we kind of leaned into like the first few with like very fantasy elements, like going really, like you see Nick calling out the
Yep.
just calling out the aesthetic and everything, really leaning into the D&D element. We also did a
Yep.
Halloween one, so being horror themed.
Yep.
But you like I kind of was fully anticipating, like, okay, Spencer's gonna like have some thoughts, but I'll have to work with him pretty heavily to like put it into this kind of format and flesh some things out. And oh man, you've totally run with it. Like, and it's very cool because you've put it into a world that I think is much more uh close to what people see.
Yep.
And uh yeah, I don't want to be like giving any spoilers to it, but I've just been super psyched with like seeing you really go down the rabbit holes, dive in, and build out, like you said, not just the
Yep.
scenario, but the world. And the scenario itself, I think, is going to be super fun to play through, because, like any good scenario, it's definitely got some twists and turns.
Yeah, for sure. And that was something that I had to kind of rein back a little bit in conversations, kind of like, working up to this, because, I did a lot of research into D&D. I've got a buddy who's been a DM for like 20 years, 30 years. Like, he's been playing D&D forever. And full disclosure, I have never played D&D before this, like before being, brought into this, right? And you asked me to do it. I've since done a one-shot D&D campaign, and the buddy of mine that I was talking about has kind of given me his like tutorial and 101 course, and like we went through a lot of different things and kind of talked about how it works and DMing and stuff like that, and actually went through a one-shot. He developed a scenario and everything for me and brought me through it. But this will be my first time doing an actual DM. But that being said, I have done a lot of research. I've gone, like you said, I've been bitten by the bug, and I've gone very deep into this. So much so that like my algorithm on YouTube, I mentioned this the other day, my algorithm on YouTube is just like Critical Role and like all of these D&D shorts, right? And these funny things, and they're hilarious. And they're like in this room, and they're in front of a big crowd, and like all of these little encounters that they have, and these interactions are hilarious, and they're so enjoyable, and a lot of them are just so wholesome and funny. And that's kind of what I wanted, what I envisioned for this, and kind of like developing this world, so to speak, was opportunities not only to learn, but just to have some fun with it and to have some interesting encounters. I'll give a little bit of a teaser of to like a little bit about the world, right? In the world that this is happening in. So there's a place called Hashbro, and if anybody's like, hash, like a password hash kind of thing. So that is very resonating with me. There's a building called the Beacon Building. And think of a typical, like, small and mid-sized city with the sky rises, it's maybe a handful of floors, or maybe 20 floors, something like that, right? It's a beacon building. The Beacon Building is the name of it, right? And the players that are going to be kind of participating in this in 2 weeks from now, they all work for, and I have to read this off my screen because the name is so long, and I haven't memorized it yet. Hopefully, I can try. So the players all work for, they work in IT for this law firm. And this law firm's name is Chopsky, Bernard, Leonard, Fuentes, D'Angelo, Albertson, Holbert, and Dean. And that was intentionally made to be like very long and exhaustive name. I thought about making it longer just to play on, because a lot of these law firms have like a lot of names in their company names or their firm names. So it was just a fun thing for me to play off of, right? So I've got some world building that I did around that as well. But I did want to give a peek at kind of like what the scenario is. So the code name or the kind of the name is Sub Rosa, as you see in the flyer there in the graphic. But essentially, kind of the start of it is there are some strange files or some strange activity going on a user's computer, and one of the help desk users gets called up. They call the help desk and they're like, "Hey, there's some strange stuff going on." And that's really where it starts. They kind of the team gets together and they notice these strange files, and that's really where we kind of pick up in the scenario. Is there's some strange stuff happening. There's some weird files. They're not quite sure what it is just yet, and that's where we kind of kick it off.
And of course, I mean, an important detail is it's Friday, like late afternoon, right?
Yeah, that was the kind of idea too. Thank you for reminding me. It was like, this is Friday afternoon on a nice fall day, I think it was, or something like that. And but anyways, it's a nice day, right? Everybody's leaving the office, and there's nobody left that's really there aside from a few IT people and this user who's just like trying to log back in to check their email and like just close out for the day, right? They're trying to close out for the day, and they're presented with this. And that is where the fun begins.
And I know we're not going to show it now because we want to entice people for seeing the same thing. And please do join along because we're definitely going to make it interactive. We're going to have players who are some other folks that have been on our streams before who are active. A couple of people from other vendors in the space, but also some practitioner IT folks. And so we're going to have the players, but then we're also going to have the audience. And we definitely encourage the audience to do heckling, to throw out ideas, to be participants in this too. So hope everybody watching this will join on Thursday, January 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern. But again, like Spencer, I was fully expecting you to have basically like come back to me with like bullet points. And instead, what you did was create a doc that has like, here's the image of the building. Like here are you have NPCs who are like you mentioned that are fully like fleshed out roles and like with names and the images and everything. And so I think it's going to be a cool immersive experience. We're going to put the players really kind of put them on their toes and really get a good glimpse into their thought process on how they troubleshoot. That's something I'm really excited about with this. It's like, we can see troubleshooting kind of best practices or I guess anyone can like look through and follow through like a standard operating procedure, but it's something else to actually like have access to experts and see them, like hear them. They're going to be thinking out loud, right? Like getting a glimpse into like their thought process and how they think about like the process of troubleshooting. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I will. I'm gonna see if I can do this. I'm gonna upload see if I can change this. I was going to show an image that I created with AI, and see if this will upload. Okay. So in crafting this world, right, in this scenario, I'm kind of like a really visual person, right? So if I'm building NPCs or something, I want to know what they look like, right? I want to know their personality, what their background is, things like that. So I used AI to help me kind of like design or kind of come up with some NPCs that are going to be in this story, right? That the players can interact with. And this is heavily inspired by, all of the things in my brain and the experiences that I've had. But this is Rick Hossflower. And he is CIO of Chopsky, Bernard, Leonard, Fuentes, D'Angelo, Albertson, Holbert, and Dean. He's a 40-year veteran of IT. He's an old school kind of guy. He's got lots of stories, about work and fun and everything in between. And you kind of get the sense that if he wasn't in IT, he'd be a farmer of some kind. I don't know if it would be a milk farmer or a wheat farmer or what.
It's the dream of any grizzled IT veteran.
Right? He's just that kind of like old school, kind of laid back kind of guy. But he still means business. And in the workplace, like he's very firm and kind of means business. Slightly overweight a little bit, but not much. He's kind of like dad bod-ish, right? Like, 50s something, late 50s something, kind of dad bod kind of vibe. Like to give you a sense of his stature, right?
Is there going to be someone who watches this and like, wait a minute, it's like, that's me? It's someone from Spencer's previous engagement.
Yeah. So I obviously, I think a lot of people with storytelling at least pull on like their history, right? To kind of imagine people and places they've been and stuff like that. So a lot of like inspiration has come from people I've met, previous coworkers. Like a lot of inspiration comes from that to like combine together like this perfect person for the story. So like a little bit of this person, a little bit of that person, a little bit of characteristic of different things to kind of make my own kind of CIO in this story kind of thing. So kind of an interesting hodgepodge, if you will. So like I said, he likes, he likes his beer with his dinner, right? Like typical kind of guy. Always wears a shirt and tie to work, despite there not being like a super strict dress code at the law firm. But anyways, this is one of the main NPCs in the story because it's, as a help desk, as a sysadmin, you have to interface with the CIO and other IT leadership. So he's going to play a role in the scenario. They've got some interesting storylines and kind of like interesting quirks, if you will, for this character, which I won't reveal yet. But he's got some interesting characteristics or tics or quirks or just interesting personality traits, right? Everybody has probably met somebody that's like, they are very unique. And Rick is very unique, and he is one of those characters. So
I like how, a lot of the folks we talk to a lot are managed services providers, and they have clients, right? And so they're constantly dealing with all these different types of businesses and types of people working there. And there are certainly like archetypes. And like what's cool about this is like this is another way to like safely basically role play a scenario with a type of client or a type of person without like it being really them, know? But like everyone knows like, oh yes, I've dealt with this person before. I totally like this. And that's really the power of like a lot of experience, right? Is like you read these people and you're like, okay, I kind of know what I'm working with here.
Yeah, and that's what I was really interested with this is as I got into it, I like I said, originally I was like, oh, it's just a tabletop. We'll do some stuff and go through some scenarios. Then I was like, no, the power in this and the beauty of like using the D&D elements is everybody knows a guy like Rick, right? A CIO. Everybody's had a boss like an IT director or a boss like Rick or some of the other characters that might be showing up in the story. Like everybody knows that one user that is, she's got a rough exterior. She's like very, means business, but once you get to know her, she's like really sweet and like, very, approachable and stuff like that, but they're kind of rough around the edges. They just mean business. They just want to get their work done. And it's kind of fun to develop those and have people have to play off of those during the scenario because that's what they have to do in real life, right? Like you have to communicate with people. You have to deal with people being difficult or not being understanding. And I think there's some real elements there that help with realism, and it goes beyond just the IT stuff, you know?
Oh man, you nailed it. Like that is such a cool part of just tabletopping that maybe doesn't always get thought through or incorporated.
Yep.
Is the fact that yeah, you're not just dealing with devices or code or your workflows, you're dealing with people. And that's like the
Yep.
biggest wild card, right? And so being able to role play to tabletop and take that into account,
Yep.
I think is a really cool, interesting, and useful
Yeah.
thing. Yeah,
And, you know, in true D&D fashion, not everything is successful, right? Like you're not always going to be successful at whatever you're attempting or your actions, or, you know, in the case of D&D, like you roll a 2, right? That's not really good roll. Like there will be negative consequences just like in real life, right?
what's awesome too is when we've done this in the past, we've had some folks go on a tear with lucky rolls. We've also had people who, you know, they probably like the thing that they're trying to do in the tabletop is something they've done 100 times, a
Mhm.
thousand times, and it's something
Yep.
they know that they could probably do, but they roll poorly. Like, you know, they're just rolling ones.
Yep.
They're crit failing all over the place. And what's fun about that is you get to kind of talk through, well, like, why, you know, what's the reason that you could have failed there? And
Yep.
it gets people to think about kind of contingency planning and things like, well, here's what possibly could go wrong in the scenario. And by
Yep.
identifying those things, then you can actually prepare for them.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And like I said earlier, and you've mentioned as well many times, is like sometimes you don't really realize that you don't know something until you're put in a position where something fails or doesn't work. And you're like, oh, that always works. And you're like, oh, now I got to figure out another way to do this.
Absolutely.
So it's another way to
Absolutely.
challenge yourself.
Totally. And that's the fun of it too, right? Like, I mean, I
Yep.
think a lot of us, a lot of the folks that are in IT, that are in security, you know, you get
Yep.
in there because you want to know how things work. You know, you're super curious and you love taking things apart.
Yep.
You love figuring things out. And so it's another way to kind of tap into that and to keep those muscles, kind of keep
Yep.
exercising them, right? Even
Yeah,
if
it's a
you
great
have
point.
like, oh, this is a standard procedure or a standard
Mm.
scenario, well, maybe it's not. And so then like,
Yeah,
it's a
that's
good
such a
way to
good point.
create.
Yeah, that's such a good point about the reason why the military drills all the time and police drill all the time and firefighters drill all the time and they go through training is because of atrophy, right? If you don't use those skill sets, you very much lose. You may not fully forget how to do something, right? But you're not going to be as proficient if you've done it over and over and over again. If you drilled it, you trained it. And so doing disaster recovery tests, doing tabletops, doing things like that, where you're actually hands-on, you're going through decision-making processes, helps you not atrophy those skill sets, those decision-making skills, and those capabilities that you have on your team. And it really helps with that. And then the other thing is new people. Like I really think tabletops, and I don't know if we mentioned this yet, but I think tabletops, disaster recovery, like tests, scenarios, things like that, are great to bring people into the fold. Like new team members on the team, like, hey, let's go through a tabletop so you can learn the tools we have, or the architecture that that we implement, or the systems that we have, so they can get comfortable with it in kind of like a low pressure scenario, so they kind of get familiar with everything. So that's another good reason that I don't think we mentioned yet, but something I just thought of just now. I was like, yeah, that's a really good way to do it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a you know, using tools like walking through kind of like you know, an intro onboarding is different than, okay, let's go through a practical application of this
Yep.
and an actual workflow. It's different.
Yep.
But yeah, I love what you're saying about atrophy. I mean, that's such a good insight, and I think likewise too. You know, if you're just going through the motions or taking things for granted,
Yep.
you know, when all of a sudden it isn't working for some reason, you could get tripped up. Versus, you know,
Yep.
just continuing to practice that and stay
Yep.
sharp that way, I think is super important.
Yeah, and going back to what I was saying about like kind of negative consequences, I have kind of thought through some of those processes and kind of those scenarios, right? Where, okay, if maybe the path was somewhat clear that they were supposed to go down and they were supposed to find this thing and it was supposed to lead to this other thing, maybe because of a dice roll or just a decision making process, they decide not to go down that path or something like that. There could be some traps, right? There could be some unintended consequences, or it could be some side rail or derailing that could happen, just like in real life, right? Like you think it's one thing, you go down this path and you investigate it, you spend a couple hours looking at it, and it's like, oh wait, that doesn't seem like that's the thing that we're looking for, or that's not the smoking gun. You lost time, and now you got to backtrack and kind of work on this other thing. So I think that's an important aspect of this too. In another element of realism to kind of like the D&D narrative storytelling type of approach, which is really cool.
Yeah, 100%. And and then there's also the the DM's favorite tool, injects, right? I mean, running tabletops. This is something that isn't unique to D&D, where a DM, if things are going a little too smoothly or not going well enough,
Yep.
you may jump in and provide kind of a change there. In tabletops, you've got injects, right? You're
Yep.
going to introduce a little chaos into the mix. And I've seen what you've developed there, and I'm really excited for you to pull the
Yep.
trigger on some of these things.
Yeah, there's a. I'll just give a sneak peek. I won't show his picture yet of the NPC, but this was another character that I really liked developing because I think everybody kind of it's an archetype. Like it's a lawyer, right, at this law firm, right? He's one of the partners, right? He's the bigwig, right? Like he's really important, and he may or may not have multiple Porsches. One for when it's in the shop, the main Porsche's in the shop. And when he needs something, he needs it done immediately. And there can be there might be some story elements related to that, right? And I think we all know people who are, they just, they maybe lack some empathy and they just want to get their job done and they're just kind of focused on their own thing, kind of thing. To be politically correct.
You have worked with lawyers.
No. Yep. But not exclusive to lawyers, as we know.
No,
there's our IT people and finance. It's the archetype, right? Yeah. So those were fun to develop too, and just thinking about my career in IT, of like thinking of all the people, like when you go through an incident or you go through this scenario, what are the type of people you're going to run into, and how can that play into the story a little bit? So that's a little bit of the elements of fun and kind of entertainment stuff, but also kind of an education point because again, it is a skill set, communication, teamwork. Those are very much skill sets, and this very much can help you prepare for those scenarios where you have to work with those people.
I'm incredibly excited for it, and I'm just so appreciative for you, Spencer, for not only being interested and up for this, but really diving into it to the degree that you have. I think that I'm just super excited to see the players interact with this and the audience to really see everything that you've been cooking on. I think we're gonna have a really good time.
Yeah, I second that. I appreciate the very extensive rope you've given creatively to like help to like figure out a scenario and kind of think through the narrative and the tools and kind of the education pieces of it. And the lessons from it. So that's been wonderful. And like your support as someone who's very experienced in D&D is very helpful as well, to be like, here's how it works. Like, here's what, would be, congruent to the D&D community. Cause that was something I mentioned to you is like, I want to pay respects to the D&D community and make it feel like authentic in that regard, while also being this educational, entertaining thing that we can fit into this fun little event for people to learn from and kind of take lessons away from. But yeah, I'm super excited. I'm like super, I'll show my nerd card a little bit. I don't know if it'll show cause I have my background, but, I bought the D&D Essentials kit and I've got dice on my desk, as you can see here. And my plan is to get my kids and do some games and play around with it. So,
oh man, I've got a couple of other things that are here and so to the fact where like my wife at one point was like, maybe we should like pull back just a little bit on the D&D stuff. But yeah, like there's a couple of things I'll have to share with you after the fact.
Yep.
Got like a pocket like dungeon quest thing that's really cool intro for them for kids and
Yep.
some guides and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I do want to stress to anyone who is watching this and is curious, like if you are not into D&D, you don't need to be to get into this.
Yeah.
I think that people who are into D&D are going to really see things and appreciate it and get all the winks and the references and everything. But at the end of the day, it's really at the heart of it. It is a tabletop. It's designed to get you thinking, all the things we've been talking about. And so, yeah, if you're into D&D, I think you're going to have a great time. If you're not, I think you're still going to get a lot out of it too.
Yeah, definitely. And that was a core thing that you stressed and that we tried to incorporate into this event is making it approachable for everyone. Yeah. And I very much believe that what we have is going to be super fun and very approachable. It is not overly D&D'd out with multiple like modifiers and crazy difficulties and like all the things that you could incorporate in D&D that make D&D awesome. But this is going to be an approachable kind of streamlined event using elements, narrative and story elements and things like that of D&D and in the context of IT, right? So yeah, I'm super excited. I'm looking forward to it. Again, I appreciate you asking me to be a part of this and kind of give me some reins and direction on it and let me run with it. So yeah, I think that's all I had. That's really all I want to talk about. I think I hit all the high notes. Is there anything else that you missed or anything you want to mention?
I guess the only thing is just we can drop a link for how to see this. And so I guess it's important. I should note this, right? We're doing this as a live stream. And so on January 30th, which is a couple Thursdays from now, 1 p.m. Eastern, there's no registration involved. And so you don't have to fill out a form. You don't have to worry about, are you getting into the marketing trap or whatever? Nothing like that. We just want to get people, make this as accessible as possible, get folks checking it out. So if you go to, where is it going to be streamed? It is going to be on NinjaOne's YouTube. And so let me grab a link and we can drop it in.
Yeah, if you got a link, and I will see if I can put it on the live too.
Cool. Yeah, so I dropped it in the chat here with you, Spencer, and I can put it into the LinkedIn chat too. Boom. So there it is. So yeah, no sign up form. You can just go right to NinjaOne's YouTube, go to live, and you'll see it there. You can set so you get an alert for it. But yeah, no registration, free for one, free for all. I think it'd be a cool thing. It'll be up to after the fact if you do miss it, or if you watch it and you love it and you want to share it with your team. All that's highly encouraged. And so I think that's kind of it. That's it from me.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely everybody should check it out. And if you're watching a recording of this, if it is before January 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern, definitely hop on over to the NinjaOne YouTube channel and check it out, or LinkedIn, wherever you like to watch your lives. But yeah, that's all we got. Super excited for this. Again, super appreciative to be involved in this. It's been a fun process to go through and like do the world building and kind of the scenario building and kind of take pieces of what are authentic to me, right? As a former sysadmin, a pen tester, a security, super passionate security person, passionate about AD, internal networks and Windows. So all of those things that if you know me, you can kind of see some elements of that in the campaign. Yeah, really looking forward to it. So January 30th, 1 p.m. Eastern on the NinjaOne channels. And yeah, I think that's it. that's
Yeah,
it.
I think tune in, and I can tell, Spencer, there's going to be more to come too, in some shape or form with you getting into this the way you have. So yeah,
Yep.
thanks for diving into it. Thanks everybody for watching this, and hope you join us. And yeah, I hope everybody has a good weekend.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna hit end the live so everybody can go on their day. But appreciate it. Appreciate you, Jonathan, hopping on and chatting with us. And for everybody in the chat, appreciate the comments, Robert and Nicholas, and everybody who hopped in the live. Even if you didn't comment or whatever, I appreciate you guys checking it out. And hopefully this was interesting. If you're into it, check it out on the 30th. And everybody have a great day, great rest of your weekend.
Take care.